I may or may not have something in here, just so you know.
Okay.
So you don't have to hide it. All right. So no, I'm just messing with you. All right.
Well, now I got to go get some. No,
you should. You should. Let's make this a conversation.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle. Look, we are recording now, so
okay.
I may or may not put that in there. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, appreciate you coming on and being patient. I again up to last minute here, so thank you for waiting a few minutes here so we can get this set up. I want to hear all about what it is you're doing with your book. I want to discuss misinformation in media, which seems to be your thing, and whatever else you want to do. To be honest, I'm here to have an open conversation with you, and everything that you're about, everything your book's about, and what's going on in the world now from your perspective would be awesome.
Okay,
why don't you take us away?
That's great. Thanks for having me. I love getting together with other people and just talking about what's going on. And there's, definitely things that people are concerned about. There's anger and frustration, both sides, really. And I think, for me, it started about 15 years ago. And I saw some corruption and I said, wow, that it was a small anthill, right? Compared to a lot of other things. And I thought, holy cow, things filter down, from the greatest concentration of power. And so I really wondered, what the heck was Washington like? And I didn't not listen to politics, but it certainly wasn't my thing. And so, and then I saw the rise of Barack Obama, and not really to say anything, particularly bad about him. It's just that he was a junior senator. And I said, wow, like if you're going to be leader of the free world, it just seems like you should have more experience, right? And so what's going on here? Do we have sock puppets where they're really not doing all that much leading? They're just being elected. And so that got me to just study. Somehow in my mind, I said, I want to study propaganda. And so I got Creel's book. You're familiar with Creel, right? George Creel, head of the Committee on Public Information in World War I. And so he wrote a book that said how we advertised America. And so it was basically this like fist pump, right? Look what we did in World War I, right? $6 million to convince our forefathers really essentially to fight in a war they didn't want to. They used everything. It was completely multi-channel. They used exhibitions. They used speaking clubs. They used, which ended up being the 4 Minute Men, where they're borrowing local authority to convince the people. It was posters, signboards, paid historians to write books and articles, and there was news media that went all across the world. It was just a massive undertaking. And I remember thinking, like, I didn't learn any of this in school, right? And then there was a big, huge backlash to what had been done in the war. And I didn't really realize that either. So I started asking my friends, like, you guys, what was your class like?
Yeah.
And people really just looked at me blankly. And so anyways, so I just started digging that, and that was it. So, I ended up in 2018 feeling like I would, try to write a book, even though I thought I was pretty doubtful about that, and kind of almost argued against it to myself. And I think whoever said the phrase, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, was a genius. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I wrote it. I was like, oh, okay, well, this would be good for like parents, maybe teaching their kids or something like that. And it was just okay. And like, I don't consider myself a writer really. But then by 2020, watching what happened there, I said, and I'd already been still researching. And so I was putting more flesh on the bones, right? Like, I got to add that. I got to add this. And so by 2020, I said, I really need to start working on this. And so I renewed efforts. Of course, I was working at the time, so it would be early mornings or, whatever. And then in 2022, and my mom passed away. And you know how sometimes things like that with a death, I said, I'm finishing this. And so got it out in late 22. And so that was the first book, and it was received pretty well for a physical therapist, really. really well.
So okay, so sounds like once you discovered and were awakened to probably the very first confirmed examples or actual, mission of state-sponsored propaganda by the United States, really, then that pretty much motivated you to go down the rabbit hole of like, well, if they're lying to us here, what else are they lying to us about? Is that what
Yeah,
sparked all
well, I
that,
mean,
really?
because everything seemed really like, it just keeps rattling apart with the news,
Right,
and it's like, like how are they doing this, or what's really going on? And I felt like if I learned something about that, then I would be better able to, parse the tea leaves, so to speak.
right. So how deep did you go in all this? I mean, how far did it drag you under the water, so to speak? Because I mean, it's really easy to get caught up in. Look, we'll just put it out there. A lot of people will say, "Well, you're just a
Conspiracy
you're a
theorist,
conspiracy
yeah,
person, right?"
right.
And it's so easy to dive down beneath those waters. You start dredging it, and you uncover one thing, and you uncover another, and it just leads to another conspiracy, another one. And a lot of people say, "Well, that's all hogwash. Like you can't prove it, so therefore it's just all stories." But in your experience so far, from your research and everything you're doing, is that necessarily always the truth? Because it doesn't sound like it is from your perspective. Like,
It's funny because my first book, I stayed away from right or left, and I really tried to stay away from even that term
yeah,
because it
try to
just
stay
it
more
just blocks
centered.
people, right? I'm
Yeah,
not trying to I just like, do you know our history in this?
right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so and then I actually got to, and what, like my second book is even to me more amazing, right? It's it goes back. Okay, can I read you a quote
You
from?
can do whatever you like.
Okay. So this is from Graham Wallace. Are you familiar with him at all?
Heard the name.
Okay, he's a Fabian socialist from the United Kingdom. He was associated with, H.G. Wells, Beatrice
Okay,
Webb, right?
gotcha.
That whole Huxley, and he was also influential in the London School of Economics. He mentored Walter Lippmann when he came over. I think stayed a year and studied under him. So he's a pretty prominent guy, right? So he says this, and I'm going to read this quote. Okay, so it says, popular election, it is said, may work fairly well as long as those questions are not raised, which cause the holders of wealth and industrial power to make full use of their opportunities. But if the rich people, important clause there, if the rich people in any modern state thought it worth their while in order to, and he lists a number of things, secure a tariff, legalize a trust, you know, oppose a confiscatory tax. He basically said there's nothing yet invented that would prevent them from spending that money. And he said, if they did so, there's so much skill to be bought, and the art of using skill for the production of emotion and opinion has so advanced that the whole condition of political contests would be changed for the future. No existing party, unless it enormously increased its own fund or discovered some other new source of political strength, would have any chance of permanent success. Okay, so he says the art and skill of using for the production of emotion and opinion. This is what we're
Hmm.
talking about, right? It's not
Yep.
specifically said propaganda has advanced so much that if holders of wealth want anything, they can get it. Well, that about knocked me off the chair I was sitting in because it was written in 1908. So my research had really just gone up to the war, and then you sort of lose the trail of propaganda. And of course, the word propaganda is an oxymoron. American propaganda is kind of an oxymoron in the United
Yeah.
States, right? It's like we're not supposed to engage in it, right? The enemies do it. And it's just recently that people are like, wow, there's a lot of things happening. Maybe the last 20 years with fake news, right? So when I got to here, I just said, like, I know nothing, right? Now I can start to pull on these strings and find out what he's talking about. And so that's what the whole other book is about. And it was just been fascinating.
So, wha- well, here's the thing.
Well,
The quote you read
mhm.
is has been absolutely proven to be true because there's been there's many psyops by the military, for example, that have taken place, and you know, uh, like MK Ultra for one, but really involved LSD and other things. But it's really meant to open your mind so that you're easily manipulated and controlled, almost like the Manchurian candidate type thing, right? Same thing. So yeah, propaganda isn't direct. It's absolutely easy to manipulate people by playing on their emotions, because humans are easily manipulated by their emotions for sure. And also, if you also challenge and pull out the heartstrings of morality, right? So it's absolutely easy to control people that way. If you directly say, "Hey, do this," of course they're going to deny it and they're going to see through it. But if you're able to play on their emotions, and if you're able to challenge the moral tenets that they believe in, then it's easy to steer them where you can. I mean, wherever you want to corral them and make them do what you want, as long as you know understand how to manipulate those things. So it's an interesting quote, which was written in 1908. You said
1908.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's like an anomaly that jumps out at you. It's like, wait a minute. So let's go back. Let's go back and start to look at what was this skill that they're talking about, right? And I realized that, as I did my research, it starts, essentially with the rise, like I call it, the rise of the commercial society, right? So you have the penny press in 1833. You have the newspapers who, before they were 6 cents a day, and that was pretty much for the middle to upper aristocracy. Every man couldn't afford that. But once it went down to a penny, and of course, then the investment costs went skyrocketing too. So that was sort of all of a sudden it was consolidating news because, the little guy couldn't play, right? The little newspapers were getting squeezed when that happened. So the penny press, of course, the railroads are expanding at that time. So you're getting the dissemination of news, across the country much easier. And so they start to sell things like, book subscriptions, magazine subscriptions, nostrums, potions, things like elixirs and things that could be sold.
Oil.
Right. Right. Snake oil. But anyways, and then you realize, okay, well, then you look at later on, they start selling events. And so P.T. Barnum and the Wild West were the two most prominent. And they start to use these set of techniques that are labeled under like publicity or press agentry. And so, like, I thought that Bernays was sort of the father of stagecraft. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Okay. So stagecraft being creating news, essentially, right?
In this context, yeah.
Right. So it's like his Torches of Freedom campaign. Would your audience be familiar with that?
No, actually, go ahead and.
Okay, so the Torches of Freedom campaign was him working for Philip Morris, who wanted to open up the market for women to smoke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you're probably familiar now. So anyways, so he concocted this scheme that was considered stagecraft, right? It's manufacturing news. And so his secretary and a few of her friends dress up for the Macy's Day Parade, and they go to a certain designated spot on the parade route where the newspapers are. They roll up their skirts, they take cigarettes out of their garter, and they smoke torches of freedom. And that's how it was presented, that, when there were just these women clamoring to be able to smoke just like men.
Right.
And it was positioned that way as a, battle of the sexes sort of thing, and an independence for women. And of course, before that time, if you were considered a bad woman, if you were smoking, and so they wanted to break it open into the regular population. And so he when he teaches Bernays, that is, when he teaches public relations counselors, he says you have to know what news is, and you have to create that news. So that's what is called stagecraft. Okay, so it's staging events, but that comes directly from P.T. Barnum and Buffalo Bill. I'm not saying because it probably came from Europe, right? But
I mean, it's really it's a theater term.
Yes.
I'm actually in the events industry, so
okay,
that's where it started. It was in the theaters, so referring to the ability to manipulate a set, whatever it is, it was fooling the audience into believing whatever is there is real.
Yes. And okay. So like, for example, or they would just make news, right? Like they would march Jumbo the elephant down
extremely applicable to what you're talking about. It really is. Like totally makes sense in how they're going to manipulate the news and label that stagecraft, because that's what they're doing.
Yes,
literally.
Yes. So, anyways, so that technology, if you will, or way of thinking about it, and what the benefit to all these publicists was that you were getting free advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you didn't have to pay for advertising; you were getting it, put on the front page with a big picture of Jumbo the elephant, right? And so, anyways, people just, these publicists started learning these techniques and utilizing them more and more. And then in like 1893, the World's Fair was conducted in Chicago. And so they put together a post-fair like summary, right, where there's this extended description of what they did for publicity to promote the World's
Mm-hmm.
Fair, and it's extensive, like multi-channel. They spend thousands of dollars, even per, like it was $1,000 in postage a day. They were mailing
insane back then.
40,000. They're mailing 40,000 pieces of mail out.
Wow.
And they were getting newspapers from every area of the world. And have you ever heard of a clipping bureau?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So a clipping bureau is essentially like, okay, so they would get all these newspapers from the world. They would have a team of people that would go through, and they would go, page by page, and then they would cut out any references to and then categorize and put them in a scrapbook and categorize the kinds of comments that were being made. And then they would make adjustments, like either reach out to those newspapers or give them articles or send them a lithogram or whatever it was they could do to sort of write, the perspective or the attitude that they had toward the fair. And anyways, so they start putting all these techniques together. And it's not long after that. So that's 1893. And you see that this technology is getting much more powerful. And these are, again, this was a corporation owned the World's Fair. And so it was a corporate people in advertising that were using this the most, right? And so just a short time later, in 1896, McKinley's up for election. He's campaigning for his first administration, and they use these techniques, and it works phenomenally well. Okay, so it makes Whitaker and Baxter, who were in California, I don't know if you knew those terms, but they were early PR people. They said, we're selling men and measures, policies, and politicians. Okay, and so that sort of transformed. A little bit later, they shifted over from the political spoil system to basically just campaign management. They knew they didn't really need the political spoil system anymore. So, so I chronicle sort of this rise of the commercial society, and then in another chapter, I go into depth on how these are really started to be used in sort of creative, very nefarious ways, other than to really just sell things, right? That we would think, oh, that's kind of innocuous. One of the other things that they sold was essentially the West. They sold it as a destination. They sold it as adventure. They sold it as, new opportunity,
expand, stake a
right.
claim.
Yes, exactly. So, and all those things don't seem like, okay, well, that's just selling, and this is marketing and advertising. Okay.
Yeah, but the risk that they took back then to do those things, you really had to motivate people to be able to want to do that. You had to sell the idea.
Yeah, right. And it wasn't always valid information. It was just the railroads were promoting it, right? Because they wanted people out there. They
needed the labor, and they needed a reason.
They needed the labor, and
they
they needed the cargo. Exactly. So it
so
ended.
let me ask you this real quick, because I understand what you're doing. You're giving the historical perspective. So where do we enter William Randolph Hearst, who has been known to be probably the master manipulator when it comes to news media, because he owned most of it at one time, and was even able to manipulate it so much to where he even was able to destroy the hemp industry, to be honest, and control it, all through using his newspapers and his outlets. Yeah. Where does he enter in? Or was he not that as big of a player as we're thinking?
Yeah, I don't think he would. I think they were all, by the time the turn of the century came, most of the major dailies were influenced by the commercial establishments that either directly owned them or owned their advertising source, because the penny did not pay for the paper itself.
Right.
So they were existing on advertising, and if your editorials were something that they didn't like, they just threatened to pull your advertising.
Right.
So most of the
They
major
still do that today.
Yes. So most of the major dailies were already pretty sewed up. And then you have the whole concept of news gathering, which is the Associated Press. And they were, of course, it makes sense, right? So if every paper has to put somebody in France and somebody in, a reporter in all areas of the world, it's going to be costly. So what they did is they just said, okay, well, let's have one big organization, and then we can syndicate the news. And at the turn of the century, it was basically broken up into five. I think it was five. It was Havas, Wolf in Germany. Havas was French. Reuters was Great Britain, and Associated Press was America. And so they basically agreed to, hey, you have this area of the world, we have this area,
like territories, basically, right?
Yes, exactly, territories. And so, but
sounds like a mafia.
What?
It sounds like a mafia.
Right. Well, the thing is, okay, so Ken Cooper writes this book in the 1940s, and he was at the top of the Associated Press at the time when it really gained the ascendancy over Reuters. And it was the backlash over the war and all of the nationalistic hysteria and the lies that they wanted something more, neutral and unbiased. But Ken Cooper says that the ability, he makes no bones about it. He's like, the ability of one nation to describe and determine what another nation will hear of it is the greatest monopoly on earth. So he's pretty specific. And he also, in the last chapter, he says, his last chapter is titled Truth, ... the best propaganda. And he says, it's axiomatic that the purer the stream, the easier it is to inject a little bit of taint and it not be noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So anyway, so you have that whole monopoly. Then you have essentially the monopoly of the dailies, right? That are really controlled by money, the bankers, and the industrialists. And so I'm trying to get this back to Hearst. He's the one who actually said, he sent a reporter down to Cuba, the Spanish-American War, and the reporter wired back, there's nothing going on down here. And he said, you supply the pictures, I'll supply the war. You remember that?
Yes, I know that quote. Yeah.
So anyways, no, but he was a colorful guy, but I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think that, you know what I mean? Most of the papers were being affected in one way or another. He was just more, they were playing on the emotions, right?
Well,
they were getting really
news
crazy.
is power, though, right? If you control the message, you control the people.
Oh yeah, I mean, right. No, that's what I'm saying. This is this whole thing, but you have to think of it like completely structurally, right?
Yeah.
Like all these things are adding up, right?
It's like, how did we get there, right?
Yes. Okay. So like I kind of explained to people, right? So if you think of local culture like a walnut, really hard outer shell, it's very self-conserving. It stays the same year over year. It does not change much. So these rural communities in America that didn't have much contact, the guy that rides in and everybody wants to know, hey, what's the news from out of town, right? But they don't change. A good example of that is the Amish.
Mm-hmm.
So the Amish have been able to maintain literally like an 18th century lifestyle in the midst of massive radical cultural and sociological transformation. They do not get electric to their house. So they have been kind of shut off from that input from outside. And when the news media starts coming in, right, your world is no longer really vettable or verifiable, right? So if I'm in a local community, like there's someone that I know, or I know somebody who's probably was there. It's not very big, right? 50 to 100 miles, the distance maybe a horse and buggy could go, right? And so again, things are very conserving. Of course, we know that like indigenous tribes, if they're not reached, they just can stay the same for hundreds of years. So at the turn of the century, you start to have this really novel thing, is that lots of outside information from sources that are essentially unvettable. And it's unique in history.
But how's it any different now? Okay. So let's
Well,
fast
it's
forward.
not. No, it's not. It's the case. The case that I make in the second book is that it begins to be controlled. Well, okay. So then you let's see. Well, we could go a number of different places.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is fast forward to today, and the tactics haven't changed. What's interesting is the whole fake news thing, right? That was basically pushed by Trump, right? Everybody became aware that, well, maybe there is fake news. And those who didn't believe what he was saying, regardless, they themselves are still skeptical of what's out there. It took all of this time for people to finally come on board to realize, like, oh, we've been lying, been lied to. And it took forever for people to actually swallow that and actually accept that that is a possibility. Like, don't believe everything you hear. And I find that interesting because we're in a time where, excuse me, but to be honest, we're in a time where everybody uses the tactic of flooding the zone with shit. Let's just be honest. It's just like, let's just put a bunch of stuff out there and you overwhelm everyone's senses and you overwhelm everything that they can do in order to take it in, extrapolate it, cross-reference it, absorb it. And we can't keep up with it. There's just so much. So it's like, it's too hard to decipher and realize what really is happening. So, we're in a different time. I mean, the historical perspective is amazing because it's like, wow, all the way back in 1908, it was said, look, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. Fast forward, and it's times 1,000. So,
right,
I mean, they figured everything out.
So why I go back is, first of all, there's no landmines back there necessarily.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I get it.
I can talk to people and I can bring these things up. And so we can actually have a conversation. Like,
yeah.
Right? So, yeah, you step back in time and then you say, well, look, this is how, like, okay, so the next portion of my book goes into the age of reform. And so you look at the age of reform, and there were two really critical books that I researched, and they had done a deep dive into what business was asking for and wanting at the turn of the century. And they wanted a lot of the trade restrictions between states smoothed out. Of course, they wanted the trusts accepted. That was a huge thing at the time, right? They're growing in their monopoly. They're lawless. They're committing fraud. They're bribing senators and congressmen, and they're getting their way. Really, they were called robber barons, right? And so people are up in arms about that, the tariffs. And so they had gone back and forth since the Civil War, and they really had no remedy. Let's talk about a time that fits ours. It's like they're losing, and losing some more.
Right.
And they're mad. They're angry, right?
Yeah.
And so how can you usurp the discontent? Okay. And so you realize that when you look more deeply in history, and I can't prove it here now with you because we don't have enough time, but Teddy Roosevelt was a real showman. He brought publicity right into the White House in terms, his reporters were called the Fair Hair Boys, and there was an Ananias Club that if you didn't do what he said, you know what I mean, or went out and spread news that he didn't want, you were kicked out of the club. And so there was a lot of pressure to do exactly what he said. He was a master publicist, is what was said about him. It was a eulogy in a magazine called The Journalist. Just like it was 1919, I think was the year he died. And so back then they were saying he really knew how to do it, right? He was a stage guy. And so, anyways, business had this agenda. Teddy Roosevelt took the discontent on the trusts, and he was the man with a big stick, and he was going to beat back the trusts. But behind the scenes, he's dealing with them, right? He's making a deal with J.P. Morgan in the panic of 1907 to give them, what was it? It was Tennessee coal that they wanted, right? If he would up the money to restore stem the panic. And so he was doing a lot of things that were for big business behind the scenes. But in the front, right, to the people, he's being made to see this big reformer beating back. And so what you can, if you do a deep dive into that age reform, you realize it wasn't as much of a victory for the people. In fact, it was more like a stage managed victory for the people, which gave them sort of this, it was like smoke and mirrors, right? So when they got to the end, and the problem with a lot of these, and I call it like legislative sabotage, investigational sabotage, is it's like, it'll look good initially, but it's about 5 to 10 years later that people will realize, oh, that was nothing, right? Like the Elkins law or act didn't do anything to stop the railroad rate, the special railroad rates would be given to Standard Oil, right, or other companies. And so, and so you start to look at history differently. You realize there's a time lag for like the initial mythology that the news gives you, and then, oh, wait a minute, in reality, it was like this. Okay, so just to give you a good example, on World War I, the Nye Committee, and again, this is just history, right? So that's the thing. It's like, so we're not talking about conspiracy. The Nye Committee was a congressional investigation of the well, they called them merchants of death, but the munitions industry, and many of the people who made upwards of like 600, 1,000% on stuff they sold to the government for the war, right? And so, and you realize, so Charles and Mary Beard, who were very respected historians of the time, examined the Nye Committee documents and said, man, if you went back and looked at the newspapers, what was actually true, you couldn't have discerned anything of what was actually true by reading the newspapers. If anyone thinks they're getting the truth by reading the news, they're sadly mistaken. And this was like in, I think it was maybe 2 decades, one or 2 decades after the World War I. So, it's trained people to look at history. We're not going to know what the history is of this period right now, right? I mean, people can deep dive and do all this stuff.
That's going to be interesting, though, right? Imagine them looking back at the time we're in now.
Who were looking back?
Whoever in the future.
Like, oh yeah, okay,
just generations later, looking back at what we're going through now. Can you imagine what they were going to think of this time, or what they were even going to call it?
Right.
Yeah. It's freaking interesting. So
yeah, sure. Are you familiar with Andy Sutton's works?
No, I'm not.
Wall Street and
I should be, but
okay, Wall Street and Hitler, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, and Wall Street and FDR, and he does a great job, basically chronicling what big business wanted, especially with Wall Street and FDR. And what I found is that it's super similar to the guys I read, Kulko and Skylar, who basically, examined all the papers of business, the speech writing that they were doing, and the journal articles that were being written. And it tells a very different story of the time period when you look at it for like saying what they want. It's like now it's like going to Technocracy and reading a lot of the public policy papers, and you'll see how aggressive they are for AI and surveillance and those kinds of things. And they're hard to read. They probably were, maybe, I don't know if they were less available for the common person, earlier, and so it took longer for those things to come out or have access to them. But it's a similar theme, and it's a pattern. So I mean, I teach looking at propaganda from like 5 different lenses, right? So we're talking about historical lens, patterns, and principles. But then there's the economic lens, which is, there were many people at the turn of the century saying, look, this corporate vehicle is too big and too powerful, right? Like it had already gotten personhood rights in late 1800s. And I even did some, are you familiar? Okay, so Hobbes in 1700 said this about corporations. He said, multiple corporations that had like they didn't have an end date, they had perpetual life, are like parasites in the entrails of a sovereign.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay, so there's going to be this competition, right? That they can't, for power. And at the turn of the century, Veblen was saying it. A little bit later, it was Mears and Means and Burley, who he wrote The Modern Corporation. He said, look, the atom of business has been split. It's been split to management and to ownership. And that split is huge. And the power of that that entity, which is just a legal fiction, essentially, is it's it's like life altering. You know what I mean? It's society altering is a better way to put it, right? It's going to transform. It's like kind of like the same boast that Wallace is saying in terms of the power of concentrated campaigns and the use of these techniques and arts of manipulating people, right? And so the business thing was going to transform the economic landscape, right, forever, and it would probably have too much power and overcome politics and the government. Like there can only be one sovereign, and it's going to be business. And there were people warning at the turn of the century that that was actually the case.
So, okay, so in your opinion, and I guess it can be verified to a degree, corporations run the world, right? But that's an old adage. Everybody's, I mean, that's been said for many years. You're just giving us that historical context here and where that started. But do you
Right.
believe it's just corporations, or is there not maybe some, I don't know, somebody, a handful of people at the top with the money and the power and connections that are also manipulating corporations to, you know, basically push the narratives that they want to make sure that they stay
Yeah,
in
I mean,
power and
I
mold the
think
world how they want.
what I like to say is that like bankers and corporations are the instrumental who.
Yeah, I think they're the tools, right?
They're the instrumental who, right? So if you're saying
Okay.
who's doing this, okay, it's obvious you can point to that and see the power, you see the influence in the campaign contributions and who gets elected and who gets even put up to that level, right? Because you have to have money to do it, and then pulling levers behind the scenes in terms of lobbying and that's why I mentioned Anthony Sutton's book because he shows so well how it was called the Swopes plan. Gerald Swopes was the head of General Electric, and what they wanted to do, was in the Swopes plan, and it was essentially became the NRA. And so he shows the transformation. So does Calco. He shows the transformation of a lot of the legislation at the age of reform and what business wanted. And so you see that what they push behind the scenes usually is what becomes the legislation. And maybe we'll get a 10% win, but 90% of the bill will end up getting them what they want.
Of course.
Yeah. And so who's behind that? I mean, it's anybody's guess. I mean, a lot of people have, they do a lot of, I try not to do things that are highly just speculative. And I don't feel like I can ever get a handle on that. I don't think I have the tools. And so, but to understand that democracy itself, I think was like mostly eclipsed, excuse me, around the turn of the century, which is, I know.
But let's, so let's talk about the why though. Okay. So we understand where it started, all the quotes, everything, examples of how media has been used to manipulate people.
Mhm.
Talked about how corporations have been used also, right? Or maybe even the corporations themselves were behind it, but in the end, there's someone controlling the corporations. So uh, let's touch on the why though. Like what is the why? Like why is it being done? I mean, I know, but I mean, I think it should just be basic knowledge, but it's all for what? Control of the people and to maintain power and to control resources.
Mhm.
So it really just goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's like you control the narrative, you control the people, and
Absolutely.
that's just what it comes down to.
Right.
So
So here's one of the things that people don't recognize. So they talk about propaganda in terms of lies and things like that. But if you have the illusion, like Le Bon said, it was going to be the era of crowds going forward in his book, The Crowd: A Study of the Popular Mind, right? So before, kings were sovereign, and then there was this flip that the people were sovereign,
right.
We rule. Okay, now that is an illusion. So, okay, now really it is.
Yeah.
And but it's the illusions that keep people, like the press speaks truth to power. Well, the press is really owned by the ruling power.
It's political
Okay.
theater.
And so that's an illusion one. Okay. That the people rule the government is illusion two, right? And that the government has enough power to put big business into place three, right? and even maybe that corporations are our friend ultimately, so you have a framework, like a structural propaganda that really keeps people blind. Does that make sense? It's a little different than saying, hey, we're just
Oh,
giving
no, no,
lies and
no, no, no.
misinformation.
I completely understand. I've said the same thing many times.
Okay.
And I
Hey,
get
we're
it.
on the same path.
Well, look, what you're talking about is the illusion of power, right? We have this illusion that we can control things, but we really have no control. So
Right.
it's almost like saying that, whatever we think we're going to do, it's already been planned out for us because we've been told what to do and what to believe we can do, and we pursue those things because that carrot's been dangled in front of us for so long that becomes a reality that we're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
So, very true. So, and here's the problem with all of this, because if this is ultimately true to a degree that we just accept things will never change, how do we break that cycle, and how do people actually take that power back and be able to change things for the better? Is it possible? Or are we just stuck on this hamster wheel, just being whipped on the back to make sure we generate whatever electricity they need to use behind us, and just,
Right.
example there. But like, how do we break that cycle? How do people actually take the power back and take the control back and hold people accountable and hold their feet to the fire, so to speak?
Well, I don't think it's possible through the political means. Is that what you're saying?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, how do we do it in general? It doesn't have to be politics. I mean, look, let's just be honest. Politics is everything. We can say whatever we want. There's politics in government. There's politics in work. There's politics in education. There's politics everywhere. All it is people jockeying for position to be recognized so that they can get in a position of power to manipulate and control.
Right.
That's politics. I mean, that's all we're doing. We're playing chess, really, in real life. So you can say, how do we change it politically in government? Great. We can try. I mean, we're, as you said, we're getting the illusion of power, especially in the U.S., how our structure's put together. We supposedly have the power to change things, but from what we've seen, especially in modern times, if we go back to 2016, even when Obama came into being, for example, that whole time period, I mean, we can go back further to Clinton, but that whole time period is when we saw, or at least I saw, the actual shift in everything, to where it wasn't so much a full court press against people. It was more like, hey, these messages are coming out making us believe that we have power and we have this opportunity, but for some reason we're never really able to achieve it, because it's almost like, well, you're almost there, do this one more thing. So are they doing nothing more then, according to what you were saying, are they doing nothing more than just keeping us busy mentally and physically to where we just don't notice anymore? We just think this is our reality. Like, is that all it is? Are we living in the Matrix?
Well, we're living, like, if you think of the communication system, so if they own the news and they, own
Right.
Hollywood and they own the magazines. After the muckraking era, they were pretty much all bought up. They radio, television, whatever. Okay, so alternative media, now they're all in that. And so, and if you think of it as like a stage, right? They own who gets on and who gets off. And you can say, well, we have free speech. We can get on the internet, but we can't have reach. Right. So
this is true.
So what's, you have to pay for reach.
Yeah.
Or you have to get on their platforms. Right. And so we really don't have effective free speech. That's really where the problem is. And so when you say, what's the answer to this? Ideas have to travel around the world to be, to have an effect, right? I mean, ideas are revolutionary. And
yes.
If enough people could wake up, right? But you are seeing some of that. But the problem is most of the people that get elevated to a high enough position, we're sheep. I mean, I tell people, embrace the sheep nature. We are sheep, right? And so we do naturally look for leaders. And so who they can destroy anyone who gets up, like I talk about Robert La Follette, who is an amazing man from Wisconsin. And they would destroy him. They always called him an anarchist, a socialist, et cetera, all these disparaging terms. They would never let him get his agenda out. He actually created his own political system, like a party system, in Wisconsin. But he rightfully should have had the reform leadership instead of Teddy Roosevelt. He was the reform guy. And Teddy Roosevelt stepped in as the decoy leader to lead things slightly astray. So it's like, if you take social media as like a big well, they had the clipping bureau 125 years ago, and it was like the first social media management.
Yes.
If you think of it as early for social media management, okay, or reputation management. And so now, I mean, they can see all these streams of discontent, and they put their people in those streams, so they control the stream, and that's the problem. So you have contamination in like the health freedom movement or any other freedom movement or the farming regenerative movement or whatever it is, right? They have all the money in the world. I mean, they have trillions, to spend at this point in PR. I mean, they can put a website up, they can get fake links, they can get, they can put any, and then they put that person on their platforms, to get them more notoriety, right?
Yeah.
And so it is really an uphill battle to get.
Yeah, no, look, I'm a podcaster, obviously. So
right. So
everything, and I was been a musician, been in many bands, etc.
Okay.
And listen, everything is pay to play. I get that. You're not getting noticed if you're not either greasing the pockets or shaking hands and doing the right things that they want you to do.
Right.
But the idea that we have no ability to take anything back for the people, I'm not sure that is.
I'm not saying there's no ability.
That's absolute anyway.
I'm just saying, the realities. Like there's a great quote in my book by Harold Ruggs. It's 1930, and he's talking about the same thing, which is amazing. He's going, "Oh, people are despairing of like we don't have enough money. How could we reach people? We can never get their message out." He was talking about 1930.
That's why it's like it's that damn old quote. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Nothing changes except what our fashion. Maybe what might be socially acceptable, but if you look at the bare bones, if you get down to the skeleton of it all, it's the same thing. It's the same thing propping it all up and holding it together.
Well, I would say, I would say at the turn of the century, when they started to get this media, Gabriel Tarde, a French guy, and I'm not saying it well, I'm not French.
I won't either. I mispronounce stuff all the time.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, but he said, he calls it it's the first time that people are galvanized together outside of a material relationship. Okay, so we talked about the walnut, and we live between 50 and 100. Okay, and so now he calls it a spiritual public where people could be bonded together based on what's coming over these airways. Okay, and so like when you say nothing new under the sun, that is different, though. You know what I mean? It's a new phenomenon that was taking place really as the technologies rolled out, right? Okay,
well, yeah,
we had the newspaper, but it's becoming like totally weaponized with 24/7 phone.
I understand. I mean, with technology, the means and methods will change, but the intent behind it, what it is, the narrative and messages.
Yeah, that's
we're going back to the times of kings and queens. This is not new.
Sure.
Manipulating the public has always been a thing.
Right.
People in power want to stay in power. Period.
Right.
Period. So
but what the tools to do it have changed, and they become global. I mean, it's really.
So are we afraid, or do you think we're being controlled by the media, and we're not standing up and taking these back because of that, or is it just because the government has the guns and we can't do it?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, what it means is this. It means this. We're being controlled and manipulated through media. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if people are fed up enough and they realize this, they can overtake their government if they want to. But what's holding them back? The fact that the government has the military and the weapons? Is that the only thing?
I can't say.
I'm not saying to physically rise up, but I'm just using it as an example of, people really want to take control. They could.
Here's the thing, right? I mean, we have it pretty good. Discontent, right? So discontent, like now maybe with AI, right? When they come in and maybe a lot of the white collar jobs get waxed, and they talk about going on a universal basic income as a compensatory.
Yeah, that's come up. You think that's going to happen? You think that they might try to go that direction with the universal income?
They may. There'll be more of us than are useful. That's for sure. So that's not a good thing. It's not a selling point for us. But still, there's a lot of us. So I think I think they may. I don't know. They have to have an answer at least for a while, right?
Something
as they take over functions in society with AI, and I think there's no doubt that they want to do that. I mean, I think Trump's pedal to the floor sort of attitude toward AI, and I would know we have a data center coming online out here and all over. They're cropping up, so I think that's definitely a concern. So we've got a lot coming down, but for the most part, we, especially the boomers, are pretty taken care of. Now, if the stocks ever blew up and the pensions started hurting, that's a different thing. So, like they've been able to keep the pressure valve low on us. And quite frankly, people don't rise up until it's difficult. It's starting to be painful and
Yeah.
they're suffering.
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they know that. So they always kind of, bring the pressure off, and then we're okay for a while. And, and I mean, I'm afraid that they'll keep doing that right until before the noose is set, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I do. And I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing to us,
Yeah.
globally, everywhere. So do you buy into, based on everything that you've just said and what you've researched, do you buy into the notion of literally like a one world government? Is there really that? I mean, we have the World Economic Forum, we have Klaus Schwab, whatever, all that going on. But do you believe that there really is possibly a global group that is trying to control everybody?
Oh, I think they're already putting the infrastructure together for that, right?
So not quite there yet, but you think they're laying
It's
the
already
tracks, right?
the train tracks are, yeah, I would say
Yeah.
they're already being laid. They're because like we had a mayor here in Tucson, and she gets elected, and all of a sudden she's joining the climate mayors of America, and it's like, what? Wait a
What
minute, who are they? What?
Yeah. So there's been some stuff going on in Arizona. What's happening? Anything you want to touch on that's happening out in Arizona?
Well, just to go finish my point with her, and then all of a sudden, the board has declared a climate emergency, and then all these things are starting to roll, right? Once they get the emergency, they can put these things through, and
Yes.
so like we don't really rule. Like, where are these things coming from? They're coming from a central point somewhere, and they're blueprints or templates that can be used in location communities and across the country and probably the globe. So I already think that it's I'm sorry, I'm just trying to have puppies. Can you hear him? He's had a little sorry.
Is he sleeping?
No, he just got something caught in his throat or something.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
My dog used to do that when he was sleeping. He'd have like these dreams or nightmares. You see him kind of like running. In the sleep
And I was trying to
everything.
pet him so that he would stop making a noise in the background. But no, so yeah, I think it's already starting to be in place. I think that AI will go a long way toward that, getting ready for those things, right? And
The AI thing's interesting because on one end, because I have many friends that were like, they're coders, they're computer programmers,
Mhm.
like computer scientists, they have their degrees, the whole deal. So they're very savvy. They know a lot about this, and in their perspective, they don't think it's quite at the point where it's actually going to replace a lot of us. Like, we're still going to need those jobs.
Mhm.
And when it comes to AI itself, it needs to be managed. It's always going to need human input or human upkeep.
Mhm.
Right now, we don't know where it's going to go.
Mhm.
It could, I mean, we could be living in the age of Skynet and Terminator. It might become self-aware. I have no idea.
Mhm.
Who knows? But the reality is, they believe, and they could be wrong, that it's always going to need some kind of human input or human manipulation to to keep up with it and whatnot. Like, we are not yet there with computer power and whatnot. I know they're working on other things, but they believe it's going to be far off before we get to that point. Regardless, though, we're going to end up there eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, and I had this conversation recently, and if you think about it, whatever we're talking about right now, like, kind of take a little segue here. It's almost like we've gone down the path of creating our replacement, like literally. So is AI going to now become the caretakers of humanity, or are we going to end up just being the food and fodder of AI, especially once it gets integrated into machines and robots? Who knows? So what's going to come of us down the road?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I agree. It's
and then politics ain't going to matter anymore. We'll all be on the same even playing field.
Just go to
no longer
happy
right
hour.
and left. It's like, hey, we need to survive.
Yeah, right.
So, but it feels like that's what's been happening, though. That's why I asked you if you thought that there might be confirmation in your mind of a one world government agenda, because what seems like happening, especially if you look at what's been going on with everything with we talk about I'm not gonna get deep in immigration because I don't want to get in. I don't know what politics are. It doesn't matter to me. But just saying that's been a hot thing, and the idea of open borders now around the globe, and a lot of people have been pushing for that and in favor of that. And it's almost like look, there's no more uniqueness. There's no more countries. It seems like they're trying to push it to where we're nothing more than economic zones, and we're slowly getting pushed to the point where it's like, here's humanity. We're one world, one people. But of course, there's going to be 3 or 4 people say, but we're going to help you make the decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like when I did my research and when you saw all these big campaigns by outfits like NAM, National Association of Manufacturers, and they were essentially well, there were a lot of different selling. They were selling the founders of industry, right? They transformed their image from robber barons to captains of industry, right? Then so that was the rehab to the men. Then there was the rehab to the entities themselves, like AT&T and General Mills, and they were all spending billions to create a corporate soul, so they would be perceived as warm, and then they were spending more billions to promote the system, which was capitalism, as is just to be completely wedded with Americanism, and so and during that time, that group of people, of course, they went into the textbooks and changed them, right? And so the whole generation is being socialized into, America the Great, I call it, right?
Yeah.
And so and the coming out of World War II, they did, I think it was NAM, I think, or National Advertising Council did $1 billion per year of advertising for capitalism itself, right? And then or $1 million a year, and then the 4 years going into Reagan, it was $1 billion a year promoting capitalism. And so, but you see this change around like 1900s or 2000, and into the schools becomes this really different twist, right? Where the founders are exposed as having slaves, and so the negative aspects of America are starting to be shown. And I believe it's totally intentional, because you want to make the next generation global citizens.
Right.
You're preparing the next generation. This is why there's this big, rift between some of the young people and the old people. Is for the older people are just is indoctrinated into the mythology of America, essentially, and so but the younger ones are basically being indoctrinated into global citizenship. And so, yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason for that, and people say, well, the leftists, the cultural Marxists, they got it in the school system. Look at the corporations were going. The power company was spending, I don't know how much, to go into all the textbooks and change, like, basically erase. It was George Orwell, right? Memory hold, the watered stock, right? Anything good about public ownership. I mean, they just they did like a scientific management. They would have a team of people, and they would take all the textbooks, and they would identify all the problems. Then NAM did it later, like over based on capitalism. It was only going to be good comments in the textbooks, and so there was going to be they were going to be sanitized for capitalism. And so anyways, so do you think that those people forgot that textbooks are the key? You know what I mean? Like, they didn't forget. The cultural Marxists, they weren't, those textbooks weren't allowed to change unless they were supposed to be changed.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And because the design was always to have corporate or global citizens. Now, we got to save the planet. You know what I mean? And so, rogue nation states who are selfish and not part of the community of nations are going to be, tarred and feathered.
So, yeah, but are we really to abandon the idea of uniqueness in culture at all? Because, I mean, if there's a move to this, then that means, like, none of us are unique. We're nothing. We're just basically servants and assets for the globalist elites. That's all we are.
No, I'm not for making everything.
I'm not saying you are.
Everything like, it's like cars. Everything looks like a CRV now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Everything gets, it's all smaller, and a pilot doesn't look like a pilot. It all looks like a CRV, everything. So no, and you want the uniform type person that's a global citizen that looks the same whether they're in Japan or
Yeah. But do
Bombay.
you think we should move that way? And just your opinion. Is that the way we should move, as humanity, or should
No, I
we?
don't think so at all. I mean, I like the differences. I mean, that's what makes us all unique, and
Right.
there is no one system fits all, right? And
I got an example that's even closer to home in
okay,
what we're talking about right now. You can't drive anywhere, almost anywhere in America, even in small towns, it almost seems, without seeing big box businesses.
yeah,
Like there's a Home Depot
right,
everywhere. There's a McDonald's everywhere. It's like they're trying to take away what makes
uniqueness.
everybody or everything unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, absolutely. And it's ugly, really. It's a corporate, it's just a corporate look to everything. And
And it is ugly. I agree.
yeah, I agree. And so yeah, no, people, it's again, I don't hope for bad times, but I know that when they come, people wake up more, so now is the time to talk to people on the left, my perspective, right? Like
Uh-huh.
if you were if you went back to maybe COVID, people on the right were maybe more incensed about things, so I just try to track the discontent because I know that people are going to be more like their box of the world is being broken and now
Mhm.
they're interested about like, wait a minute, let's talk about this. And so um and getting a message out in a way that's non-partisan and historic and away from landmines is what I'm trying to do. So and I have like a study guide with the first book, and I'll probably make a study guide for the second book, but it's going to be a little bit. But so people can sit around in a it could get people together and actually have conversations, which you know is
Well,
pretty novel, right?
yeah, these days it is.
And
All
not
right.
have people
So,
yelling at each other, but you're talking about important things. Like for example, do we really have free speech?
yeah,
Right? In an age of like have you ever read any of gosh, his name's Phillips from Sonoma State. He wrote The Giants.
I didn't. No,
Okay, well,
no.
Omnicrom, WPP, and Intergroup. These really, those are like the top three public relation firms. But he shows in his book. I mean, he like literally everything has a public relations um, department except for us, right?
Yeah.
So
Let
like
me
all
let,
like
let-
like the military has it, the all the nonprofit groups, the
yeah.
universities have it, the government departments have
Michelle,
it.
I want to ask you something though. I mean, every everything, like, you spent a lot of time on this, obviously.
Mhm.
So how can people learn? I mean, obviously they can read it in your book, but like, can you give us a quick, like, how can people learn to spot the manipulation and recognize the manipulation?
Well, that's the thing, right? So like I don't okay, can you see this?
It's kind of going in and out.
Yeah, I can't see it. It can't come out there. Maybe that's a little bit better. Anyways, you can put it on the thing. But so you have a historical framework, right? And so patterns and principles, and the time lag, and that any story that came out right at the time was generally not true, right? That's reality from the 1900s on. Okay. Then there's an economical framework, right? That, like, for example, Trump will say, "Oh, we're going to make America great again." Well, wait a minute, or like we're going to bring manufacturing to the United States,
Yeah.
and you go like that's laughable, right? Because you might bring something that's pertinent to them, but they're multinational companies now. They don't do anything that isn't, they're not for America, right? They're seeking four things: low labor protections, low environmental protections, subsidies, and tax breaks. And they can go at literally anywhere in the world. So why come back to America? And why would you do that anyways if in 4 years Trump's not in office anymore? And
Well,
suddenly everything can be rolled back. So I mean, I'm just saying, like it's like if you understand, the power that they had at the turn of the century, you can something like that um doesn't delude you, right? Is that making sense?
so the problems there, just using that example there, the problems started when you were talking about corporation general back in the beginning.
Right.
Once a business was recognized as a person, so to speak, and not just an entity, but in, like, they can be an individual. You can be taxed like an individual, but you're really a corporation. you're not a person, but you kind of have the same rights, but not held accountable as a person does, like a
Right.
real person, which is ridiculous.
Right.
So once that happened, there was no reason to be tied to the country from which you are or have been. I mean, there's no more national
Mhm.
pride in a corporation. Now it's just about money. It's about the
Right.
global economy. And when it came to manufacturing, let's not forget we gave that away as Americans. We gave that infrastructure away. So to bring it back is not feasible because we're just not set up for it. It'll cost so much more money
Mhm. Mhm.
to do that we wouldn't even be able to afford the goods that were made from these factories.
Right.
So we kind of shot
Right.
ourselves in the foot when it came to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
it benefits the companies, like you said, though,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It keeps the
Yeah,
profits in their
absolutely.
pockets.
So right. And we've been indirect beneficiaries of that
Yes.
from the stock markets, right? So
Mhm.
if the corporations are doing good because they're exploiting people,
Agreed.
which usually they're exploiting labor, right? Sweatshops are right on the other side of Mexico, right here, right down here.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think so, but again, knowing that historically is a framework, glasses, right? So to speak. And then you look at the communication platform and how early, like this, if you know this history, you realize that, they own that platform, right? And like for example, and this idea of usurping discontent. I mean, this is how you keep a democracy look like a functioning democracy. You have to have victories where the people look like they win,
Yeah.
and you have to have exposures that look like the bad guys are getting punished when they never are.
Yeah. It's like gambling. You got to let them win once in a while.
Exactly, so they keep coming back.
You know?
Exactly.
Once in a
So
while, you gotta
that's
look like you
it.
keep a
That's
house.
it. That's a perfect example. That's perfect, George. I got to use that in my book. It's like gambling. We just got to let them win
Yeah.
every once in a while.
Every
And
once
that's
in a while,
what
you
it
got to
was.
give
It
them a
was
win,
a,
and they stop coming back.
right. That's what the Age of Reform was. It was a phony win,
Yeah.
to be honest, for the people. And Roosevelt, instead of saying, look, there are real problems with the corporate structure, right? There's no liability anymore, which is what you just said, right? So nobody can,
Or accountability, right? Not
right?
really. There's so
Yeah,
many
nobody can
loopholes.
sue them. They can. It's like they can drive this big truck around and crash into things and wreck stuff, and they can just drive away.
Yeah, and they got more money. So if you do want to get into a lawsuit, they're
Right.
just going to
No,
outspend you. You
right.
can't afford it.
You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't hold them accountable. You can't. Right. And there's no liability. Nobody's going to prison. So, anyways, they were supposed to be for short term.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be. And again, the states would charter them, and they kept a rope on them, right? Because they were so dangerous and powerful. Right after the South
Mhm.
Sea bubble in the UK, they banned them for almost 100 years because everybody lost money. Everybody was screwed in the South Sea bubble, and the population rose up and said, "You better get rid of those things." And as soon as that generation died, they brought them back.
Wow.
And so,
So it's
anyway,
like literally the literal example of you keep talking about the historical perspective. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And
Mhm.
also, if you know your history, you know where you're going.
right?
So it's crazy, that if we ignore that. But as you stated earlier, it's very true. Look, history is written by the winner or whoever controls the narrative in
Right.
this case. And we don't ever really, are we really going to ever know the truth? Like, I'm going to tell you this right now. I was an avid reader. I don't have time for it anymore. I am so busy. I have so much going on. So I used to love it. I mean, I read so many books, but the reality is I have some books that I kept. I didn't sell them all, but I have some that I kept that I can go in and I could read a passage, especially a historical passage. And it says one thing. I pick up a modern history book and it's a completely different thing now.
Mhm.
And it's like, wait a minute, how come it doesn't reference this war in the way that, but
Mhm.
and that does happen. History has been rewritten. Even in my lifetime, I have noticed that.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, if you can be, all these frameworks help you to blow up propaganda. And so, it's about trust, right? So trust in democracy would keep you very, very vulnerable. If you don't get
But we don't have power. How's it ever going to work if the people don't have the power, right?
right. We don't. And we've let it amass so much. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
it's just a little snowball rolling downhill now. It's not like if we'd have caught it at the turn of the century, right?
It kind of asks the question, Michelle, did we unintentionally give it away ourselves? Did the people just naively give it away because, as you stated earlier, like, hey, we kind of live comfortably. I mean, we may be manipulated, but life ain't that bad in America, for example. Could
there
be
was,
worse.
like I said, there was a lot of discontent, right? The West,
Yeah.
the South, and the Midwest were getting screwed. Like they had tariffs for the Northeast, and so they were paying more for all their you know.
Oh no, I'm talking about modern times.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
like,
So
yeah. Like
what was the
we've
question again?
literally given away our ability. Like it's almost like we don't care anymore. It's like, yeah, whatever. You just move
Well, I
on with
mean,
lives.
like, I mean, it is. It surely is, because you lose, right? And you realize, even if you protest, they can infiltrate a protest easily. I
Yeah.
mean, and blame it on that group,
True.
which, I mean, that's a piece of cake. And so it's been done historically numerous times. And so, like, you don't even have the protest anymore. And so you think, well, and right and left doesn't matter, right? So I think there's a whole pile of people in that middle. But again, they're looking for leadership, they're looking for a voice. And you got tons of people out there, like, I don't know if you the voluntarist movement, which I think is just ridiculous.
What's that? I feel
You've never heard
stupid.
of that? That's pretty big out here. It's with, like, oh, who are the biggest guys? Well,
I
James
feel like I
Carter,
should know that.
Larkin Rose, Derek Rose, I think. Anyways, but it's talking about, it's like saying, okay, government's run by organized crime, and
Ah,
government's bad, and you can get rid of government, and it's just it's ridiculous, if you ask me. I mean, it's like saying, okay, money's getting laundered through a Chinese laundry. Let's say all Chinese laundries are bad. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah.
You got
Yeah.
to figure out. I mean, like, government itself is just a contract. So they
Mhm.
have this. So there's a lot of. It's just, see, again, if you can take the people, take them slightly off track, and follow some. I don't won't say what I want to say, but anyways, some leader, so-called
You can say
leader,
it. You can say it. Say it.
so-called leader. And it's like, and
King.
they're being,
Say
so
it.
they got the alien thing, the aliens are coming.
Yeah.
All these streams of just, and the people just don't know where to turn to.
Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that interesting how our government has lately been uh
Yeah, I know what you're
admitting the
saying.
existence of it? A lot of people forget during COVID that the CIA released all these documents related to aliens. They
Mhm,
literally released it.
mhm,
It was a big old thing. And for 2 days, it was a big thing. And then people just they forgot.
mhm.
And it's so funny. And recently with Obama's statement, which you could read that many different ways. He could be facetious. He could just be going, "Yeah, they exist, but I don't know, maybe that's what he was saying." But and then Trump responds like, "Well, he's giving away secrets they shouldn't be giving away." So what is true? And is that story not yet another distraction? Like you were saying, is it just something else to keep us busy and
Yeah,
occupied?
I think it is. I think there's so many. I mean, they're throwing so many things at us at once. And so long as they have these.
Fire hose, right?
Right, and like that national sovereignty movement stuff, I think that's absolute nonsense. Like, if they don't follow the law, if it's a lawless group, how are you gonna get them to keep the law anyway?
Yeah.
And it's such a messaging nightmare. It's so complicated that, you'd have to you'd have to consult 5 attorneys to figure out if it was actually true or not. Anyway, I mean, so many of these things that people, are people being, here's they're like, life rafts that are being thrown out, that are broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere, and they're not going to have any meaningful impact. But the sound voices can't get traction or don't have money. But
It
I tell people, it's like, really, we have to spread the message, right? Like, that's why I say these groups, like, teach your kids, like, like, if you just hand them a phone, even if you hold off giving them to them, like, let's say they're a teen, they don't know what they're entering. If you can, give them historical context and say, everything, is suspect on this, and you know what I mean?
Well, they
Um,
have to understand what they're up against.
yeah, help them to
And if you
understand
don't
what they're up against.
understand it, you don't know how to move forward. You
Yeah,
can't come up with a game plan. But
right.
that also challenges the idea, which may be another falsehood, like the idea of grassroots movements and organic growth and all that. I mean, it doesn't stand a chance against the big machine of money and
Hmm.
manipulation. I mean, there's no
Well,
way.
right. So at some point, like, push comes to shove, we're gonna be asked to do things we don't want to, you know,
Pitchforks,
huh?
pitchforks.
Yeah, right. I know, right, right. So I mean, people, like,
I don't want it to get there, but
so
it's
Solzhenitsyn, said, right. So it's like, you never know what people are going to do when that moment comes, right? So if
yeah.
it's,
You're right.
I say people are going to have to suffer. I mean, you don't get to maintain freedom and not suffer, right? You have to.
Yeah.
It's if you want safety and security, you're going the way they want you to go. they've
Well,
trained
look,
you the way they want you to train. To be
was that? I
trained.
hope I don't get it wrong. What good times create weak men, right? Bad times create strong
Right.
men.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be just men; it can apply to anybody. But
Right.
just saying, and that's a very, very true statement. I mean, we've had it good for so long that we become complacent, we become weak, we become unwilling to challenge because we're like, hey, I got a decent job, I got Starbucks on the corner, who cares?
Right. Right. But that whole thing is, I mean, it's time to,
House of
they've
cards,
gone
though,
across
right?
the world, right? And I liken it like this, okay? Coming out of the World War II, our generation, or maybe a generation and a half, got a skim. They got played into the deal.
Yeah.
Okay. You get great benefits. I mean, you got ridiculous, like manufacturing wages were high, right?
Yeah.
And everything was taken care of, your insurance and everything, and you're getting played into the deal, right? Okay, but you got to be like a little wary, right? So like then they go around the globe, right, expropriating resources in different countries, and just creating the networks that they need globally. And now they're coming back to America. But it's time to settle up, right? It's like, well, we won the monopoly game. It's time to liquidate.
Right.
And I think that's what you see happening, right? I mean, look at the housing market. They're seeking real assets. They're using equity to buy up houses. There's people here in Tucson that have showed me, like, hey, they get these postcards all the time saying, hey, and they don't live in great areas, right? Because I do home health, so I go around different places, and they'll say, I get calls regularly every week, and it's a nothing. The place is nothing, and they're offering 160,000, or more. You know what I mean? For like just a small, it's not even a big lot, right? And so they're, I think that they want that to be a thing of the past, right? Single family ownership.
Yeah, there is that. But let's just be honest. What you said earlier kind of proves the point of certain systems, like we're talking about socialism, or even the Marxist outlook. Well, they're fairly tied together. That for something to succeed, something else must suffer, right? For something to be elevated, something has to suffer. So while America looks strong, there's another country suffering because we need those resources, for example.
Right.
And you even see that in nature. I mean, let's just be honest. Every predator needs something to prey on. It's a natural phenomenon. So the idea that we're ever going to get to a point where humanity is kumbaya, utopia, and all of this, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, we're just, having the conversation. It's not feasible. It's not natural, to be honest. It really isn't. And I guess, as you said, we have to suffer a bit to get over what we're, going through. And it really goes back to like, look, if we're never gonna be challenged and stressed, we're never gonna become great. Again, there might be evolutions of that, but again, once we become great, something has to suffer. Like, there's never going to be an even playing field. So how are these?
But I think there's more potential, and I mean, like there's people that own, like just ridiculous amount of like a small number of people who own ridiculous amounts.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
That's true.
no, I know. But I'm
true.
saying that there could be. I mean, there could definitely be more equitable use and farming and regenerative farming and better food, and you know what I mean. People.
Oh, no, I get it. I mean, and when you look at like states, for example, we're just talking about the U.S., not globally, but states where it's like, oh, it's illegal to collect rainwater. What water that falls out of the sky? You own that? Like, really? Oh, you can't grow your own vegetables in your backyard. Why? Who's it hurting? Like those things. Like, I get it. It's like, if you even think about it at that level, it's like, who are you to control what I can do, which is a basic right of a human? Like, if I'm out on the plains and we're trying to survive, damn right I'm going to stake my claim, try to grow my veggies and collect rainwater. But if I buy a house, I get taxed. I pay property tax in perpetuity. And then I can't do the things that I usually used to do if I was in the pioneering days. Like, does that even make sense?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's just, it's massive control, right? And it's the way people got to get sick of it, and people got to train their kids. I mean, there's no easy answer, George, and we know that. You know that. You wouldn't be doing these podcasts if you thought there was an easy answer.
No, there isn't.
But it's like my motto this year was real hope begins when illusions end. And there was a friend of mine.
That's a good one, actually. I like that. I like that saying.
Yeah, and so there was a friend of mine who was sort of just got interested in that Andes crash, and there was a movie made out about it and a book. Do you remember in 1972 they crashed? And anyways, he was telling me about this one moment where they had repaired the radio, and they're all listening around that radio, and they were listening, they were hearing about the search, and they hear the words that they would never want to hear, which is the search had been called off.
Right.
And so at that point, they had to decide what they were going to do. And so they ended up doing cannibalism. They had to do that to strengthen themselves. And they walked out to a certain point and saved themselves. But how I use it now is that people think, politics is going to fix us or something. It's like you need to hear the bad news. I mean, if they did not hear that day, there's a probable chance that they never would have survived, because they may have stayed, a month longer and just were totally in a weakened state and couldn't do it. Right. Or that it was deeper into winter. It was impossible. There were passes that they wouldn't have been able to make. So, hearing the bad news is a good thing. Right. And then really what you've got left on the table, and you get really realistic quick. And so, I'm like the Jeremiah, like the alternative media. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you the bad news. This is the really bad news. We're up against it.
How do you feel about modern media, like what's considered alternative media, like podcasts and YouTube channels and all this? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Because it seems like there's a lot of people talking a lot of bullshit just to get attention, and it's like, should look, we're already being manipulated by big corporations anyway. But the reality is, at what point do we not hold those people accountable, just as we would want to have corporations held accountable? It seems like they've been given free reign.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of stuff being sponsored out there, actually, and then just of course, there's always a knucklehead who just, like you said, wants ratings and just to make a dollar for it. And they, I think, like, the politicians are not coming to help you, and the social media influencers are not coming to help
you. No. I mean, look,
they're not coming to help you. So
they're not going to save you.
You've got to build.
Everyone's in it for themselves.
Right. You got to build local. You got to build your walnut again.
Your community.
The walnut, right?
Yeah.
What I call the walnut, and that local community is going to really help you in a day when things are hard. We don't really have any local leaders now, George.
No.
Right? There's no civil society. There's no lawyer that people look up to, and the politicians are just forget it.
And the problem is, even these so-called local leaders are just taking the lead of the rock star politicians. They're starting to follow that model. Big fish, small pond, problems is what it is. And so it's like they're kind of following in the same footsteps. So yeah, they don't care about community. They just want to be rock stars. They just want to be recognized.
Right. So if you can make networks of people that are sane and like you and me, and that have their,
I don't know if I'm sane. I've just opened a conversation, and that's what you were saying earlier. Like, people don't talk anymore. They don't have discourse, and people don't want to offend others, and they just walk away and scream and stammer, and they don't want to be challenged, and that's the problem also.
Well, and you think about it, right? So, like, if you look at, I call it the bifurcation of the public mind. So prior to 1996, when Fox News started, right, you had one source one stream that everybody's drinking from to create that public mind, right? That spiritual public that Gabriel Tarde talked about in the 1800s. And so it splits off, right? Because the disaffection, like the mainstream is getting, let's say, tacking left, and people feel like they're being left out on the right, their issues. And so Fox News splits off, and then other cable news, similar ones. And you have these streams diverging till we're down here, you know what I mean? We're so far apart that it's almost like getting different facts through two different sources. So we're not even talking about the same facts anymore. Right. Which is devastating, which is why everybody just yells at each other. You know what I mean?
Do you believe in the horseshoe theory?
The what theory?
Horseshoe theory.
I'm not sure I've heard that.
So it's like, if you look at politics and even media, it's like a horseshoe, right? And at some point, as you start to get around that horseshoe, the horn, it gets closer together and they're almost start to look like more similar than they are different. As in, is there any real difference? Is there really a left, right? Or is it just two sides of the same coin? I mean,
Well,
honestly, I mean, because I can't believe there's really different factions of people trying to grab power so much as it is, hey, we figured out how to manipulate people enough that if we show them options, they're going to believe they have options, but they really don't. And in the end, everything is like a pyramid; it just funnels up to the top, and
right,
eventually goes up to one source.
right. Yeah, they
Do you
definitely
think
want to
that?
constrain the options, right? Like
Yeah,
like I have this other this is I don't have yeah, this is another I love illustrations. I don't know if you can see that.
not too clearly,
Okay,
but
it's called the monopoly tree. The monopoly tree, okay, it has leaves, these are issues around the tree. And
right,
then at the bottom are all these monopolies. There's the monopoly in finance, news media, corporations. Of course, universities they're like public-private partnerships now, right? The Bayh-Dole Act allowed them to come in and use taxpayer money to get,
yeah,
patents and stuff. And then the medical system. I mean, I've been in the medical system for 30 years, and it's being bought out by corporate entities so that the upline and the horizontal and vertical lines are all melding together, right? I went
yes,
recently into a interview, and they said, oh yeah, we share, it was two home health companies, and they're like, oh, we share a conference room. And I said, oh really, huh, that's interesting. And then they go, yeah, we share staff. And I said, so you're the same company? And they go, oh
it's
yeah.
crazy.
So it's like two different brands, right?
Yeah,
You could have this brand or that brand, but it's the
right.
same parent company. So it's just
Well,
like they do in the food industry, right?
yeah, like Pepsi and Coke, for example.
Exactly.
You know,
And
they own like Minute Maid and all these other companies that you wouldn't even know, Gatorade, all of it, Lay's potato chips. It's all like PepsiCo or a
right,
Coca-Cola, but most people don't even know that.
right, right. And so yeah, so it's getting crazy, I mean, so you have these monopolies. Okay, so the point is that if we pull any of these things off the tree and the monopolies stay there, that's where all the power is what you're always saying,
Yeah.
George,
So in your opinion, is it really getting worse? Is it getting worse throughout time? Or they just get better or they just getting better at keeping us complicit?
What do you mean worse? Are by
Well, the control.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's starting because they could only take over. It's like the takeover of medicine started in the 90s.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because I was in Virginia at the time, and they were buying up all these little community hospitals. And when they had bought up all the community hospitals there, they waxed the allied health professionals by about, $5 a visit, which, over the course of a year was like 10,000 for a year. So your salary just dropped 10,000 because they had a monopoly.
Hmm.
And so you start to see it play out, right? They go into this industry, and when they basically cannibalize it, right? Because profits become the only um value. And
Yeah.
so, treating people, there's always nonprofits, and there was
Profits before
kindness.
people.
Yeah, right. And I like now rehabs, I call it warehousing old people for money. Like I know somebody who
I
just went in for a hip replacement, and they're like so mad that they went down to the rehab and they were only doing arm exercises that they pulled them out. And I'm not saying it's like that everywhere, but here the rehab is pretty poor. And so like it's just a matter of how long will your insurance run out? That's how long we're going to keep you.
well, so in the you probably know more than I well, I'm sure you do. You're in that on the other side of that, but
Hmm.
medical industry in general is ridiculous. Insurance companies are ridiculous. Like we're
Right.
given this false sense of choice, and we don't. And this is just my opinion. You can correct me because you were in the business. But the reality, what I saw is, I remember before Obamacare was rolled out, that my insurance was cheaper, that I had more options,
Mhm.
and then once Obamacare came into play, all of a sudden, no matter where you went, there really wasn't a free market anymore. It's like, okay, it worked for the insurance companies because now everybody had the same price no matter where you went.
Mhm.
There was levels,
Mhm.
but it was the same price no matter where you went. I
Mhm.
remember that. Like all of a sudden, it's like, and I'm not just saying that your insurance goes up with age, which is another stupid thing. Because I know people who are. I mean, I have one of my friends. I don't even know. He lies about his age. He may be closer to like late 90s, like getting his 90s, late 80s. And the guy is healthy as a horse. I swear to you, I don't know. You can't keep up. The guy will go to nightclubs. You name it. He's crazy. It's just
Huh.
how he lives. And hardly ever has to go to a doctor.
Mhm.
But yet because of his age, he's going to be penalized just
Mhm.
because of that number, right?
Right.
So it's just crazy how they find ways, corporations, whoever the powers that be, to take control, like you said, infiltrate and subjugate us to nothing more than being meat sticks to feed the machine and to line their pockets.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
isn't that
Meat stick.
crazy?
Yeah. No, it is. And seeing it just transform healthcare. I mean, like I have a friend who's a nurse. She was an emergency room nurse, but she says Florence Nightingale has left the building. It's tragic, but she was chronicling for me one day how basically they rooted out all the old school nurses, the ones that had integrity, and were like, we're not doing that. I mean, so we can lower the number of people
Yeah,
on a floor so that people, I mean, like right now, like down here, they'll keep a person cathed. They'll keep a cath in because they don't have the staff to toilet people. So, and they don't even have chairs in the room. So you're not getting up. So if you're like 85 and you get put in a bed for 6 weeks, you're getting worse. I don't care what therapy you do with you.
yeah.
If you're in
Your
a bed
body
all
has to
day,
move.
you're getting worse. And so like the whole idea of actual care has been turned upside down. It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, well, you're just a number.
Right.
When doctors are given bonuses, based on how many patients they can
Mhm.
serve.
Mhm.
Um, doesn't that say something?
Mhm.
Like when the company they work for is able to give you a bonus based on how many. It's like you're being a salesman at some point. And
Yeah.
at one
No,
point,
it
are you
is
really
marketing. Right. It
yeah?
is.
Do
It's
you
a
really care
marketing thing
about
now.
caring? And look, I know there are doctors who do care. I know doctors I personally have as friends that
Mhm.
absolutely care, but they also, I mean, they need to pay their bills. It's like they're
Yeah.
caught in the middle. You know,
Mhm.
it's unfortunate that the medical industry became what it is.
Mhm.
Um, when exactly do you think that happened?
Well, like I say, I saw it happening. Like it was an ideal environment when I first came out.
You think the '90s is when it
I
took
think
the
I think
change?
the late '90s is when they started buying things up because I
It's
was.
crazy. Also, the time of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah,
Did
right.
that go hand in
And I
hand?
was I was there. I was on the ground when that was happening, and basically the nurses were coming in, and it was an order from above. It's like nobody should be in pain. Everybody needs to be asked,
Crazy.
what's your pain number? And if it's over 5, we have to call the doctor. This is coming out of Medicare,
I
like
mean,
CMS.
and it's hard to deny that might not be tied, right? Those two things. The change in how the
Yeah.
medical industry was approaching
Hmm.
patients, patient care, and let's be
Hmm.
honest, money and profit,
For sure.
and also the control by big pharma with the rollout of opioids. And
Mhm.
it's crazy because I talked to ex DEA agent where he brought that up when we're talking about drug trafficking and drug trade and how a lot of that was influenced and manipulated by the actual opioid epidemic, which led to people to search out more drugs
Mm.
and more, get a different high, et
Mhm.
cetera. And through his work and in the DEA, he actually was able to go and be motivated to research and go deep back into the cases and everything that where it started and trace it back down to the opioid epidemic.
Mhm.
So crazy how those
Yeah.
two things are, well, three things are tied now that I'm talking
Right.
about.
Right. Right. Yeah.
All started
Yeah.
with Purdue.
Yeah, so I mean, so like, as soon as the corporations really like infiltrate a sector or not only just an industry, but an institution, right? Like the
Yes.
institution of
And then they become the institution.
yeah, academia, and then it all gets turned upside down. It's not about learning, it's about profits, right? It's about
Yeah.
patents, and it's about taking over the research, and then medicine becomes about just marketing sickness, in a way, and just turning people over fast to make money. And it's just, Yeah, it's not good. And people, I mean, the thing is, get so sucked, your livelihood is tied to it. And,
How
and
your opinion though, is academia broken? Can it be fixed at this point?
I don't know. I mean, they're put in every place that they go, they put, instead of the old time academic, like the professor or whatever makes it up, it's the CEO, it's a
Hmm.
CEO that's controlling it from the top. I know that like ASU is really like it's just public private partnerships the whole way. I mean, they got McDonald's and all the chains on the campus now, and
Crazy.
suites for businesses. And I mean, it's really becoming a jobs works program, a research pipeline. Yeah. So, and then of course, humanities and everything, a broad education was kind of being shoved overboard really in the 80s. I know when I went through, it was, you had to take your, like some gen ed, but it certainly wasn't, um, it was more like practical based
Right.
education.
Which
So,
makes more sense to me because then you can focus on, the discipline that you're
right,
going to school for.
right, right. So, yeah, no, all these things have been infiltrated, I think, if you want to, express it in that way. And so,
I
and
mean,
they're all
there's
being
no other way to
distorted,
express it.
so so
Yeah.
the real purpose is completely distorted. And so you have that across, like you said, universities, the medical system, just business in general, right? And so like it's not human. It's an anti kind of human, which to subdue every value to a profit value, right?
So let's let's start wrapping up. Not because I don't enjoy the conversation, just I don't want to keep you too long, and
Yeah. Okay.
we got to move on. But I like this conversation. You're extremely intelligent. You obviously are well researched. And I feel like an idiot talking to you. But the reality is, I think people will benefit from reading this book. I actually want to read it myself. So here's the deal. Can you please tell people where they can find your work?
Okay. Well, you can find it at smartsheep with an e.com. And then of course it's on Amazon. And there is a study guide to go with it. So if you are so inclined, get a group together, or like at least do something with your, let's say, grandkids or your kids. I mean, they have to be a certain age, but it's a great way to start bringing up these topics and talking about them, right?
Right.
And and then the next book is in the works. It's getting a copy at it now. I've got tons of really good diagrams. I'll send you a couple of these. Okay, they're fantastic. I got a great guy do the graphics, and they're eye catching, and trying to get some momentum with social media before I release it. But it's being fine tuned right now, so it shouldn't be. I'd say 6 weeks, maybe 2 months at the most, I think. And so that'll be
Nice.
available in both those places as well.
All right. So one more question that kind of goes back to what I asked earlier. Very similar, maybe even the same question. I don't know. Can we change everything? You're like,
Look,
well,
I mean, I'm not it's like I gave you that motto that real
yes,
hope begins when illusions end.
yes,
But I really like the ending of Lord of the Rings. Everyone's read that, right? You've read that.
yeah. I mean, that's popular.
Okay, so the ending of the Lord of the Rings is, like we're really staring down Mordor, right?
Yeah,
I mean, things are getting broken down. Like we just talked about, it all looks black, it looks dark, it's like anti-human, and the truth seekers and those that kind of have their eyes open, they're small in number, and they start off in a direction, they fail. They realize that they are not going to be able to do what they originally thought, and they send the humble hobbits around back, right, to see if they can sneak up, and then they basically throw themselves at the front gate,
yeah.
in almost virtual suicide. They don't even know at that point if the hobbits are still alive, and as a misdirection, and somehow, I believe, I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christian, and I think in some ways we have to do our part, We have to do whatever small part that is, and all those things together. I think I do have hope in how things will turn out. But is it going to be hard? Hell yeah. You know what I mean? Are people going to die? Yes. Are people going to suffer? Yes. I mean, strap up, right? Because it's not going to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. You don't get to retain freedom, without hardships. And so, but I like that ending because it's like you just do what you feel like you're supposed to do. Be obedient to what that voice is telling you. And I think when everybody starts doing that, we don't have to worry about, like, success is a modern affliction of the modern mind, right? In terms of,
I agree.
I can only do something that I think it's going to be successful. Like I don't think that, like, am I going to change the world writing a book? But I feel compelled to write the book. So darn it all, I got to write the book, right?
All right. Well, so I got one more. I thought that was gonna be last, but do you see parallels between the fall of the Roman Empire and the United States of America at this point, or Western civilization?
You know what? I have to say that I'm not that well studied up on it. Okay. So I'm probably not the person to answer that. Yeah, I just want to say where I don't.
That's fair. Yeah. You at least you're honest up front. Many people will try to talk their way through it.
Yeah. No,
that's fine. I said because a lot of people have professed to see parallels. I kind of see parallels, especially when we're looking at society and what's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go too deep into it, but there seems to be parallels, right? And every civilization eventually, that whichever civilization is on top or leads eventually ends. Like we can talk about Genghis Khan. We can talk about even feudal Japan ruled a lot and conquered a lot of area, even over China back then. We talk about the Roman Empire, Alexander the Great, the Greeks, etc. So there's been so many rulers or ruling empires that have all fallen. I mean, the United States is an experiment, like literally an experiment. That's, it's
right.
aging,
we have to be realistic.
we're not that
Every civilization has a time period on it. And like you say, it's what shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 4 generations or something like that. Or that people become soft, like you mentioned earlier, and then they can become complacent, and they have to earn some things back, learn some things, and earn some things back.
Yeah, it's crazy. We went from we went from
the depression.
Yeah, well, there's that, but just saying, like when we were talking about shirt sleeves to short sleeves, it's almost like we went from prim and proper to like slacker.
Yeah, right.
Slacker and whatever.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, it's sad.
Anyway, listen, Michelle, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to let you go so don't keep chewing your ear off over here. But
okay,
I appreciate the conversation. That was very informative, interesting, and man, your recall on history is great. I really enjoyed the historical perspective on media and how it started, and how it came to be manipulated and continued to evolve. And how
I'm telling you,
was,
it's phenomenal. Like when you start getting into earlier than World War I, and you start changing that. You don't talk about propaganda, but you talk about social control. Yes. Public opinion, those kinds of words. And wow, you just start, like there's a great article called How the Railroads Make Public Opinion in 1906. And, so people were talking about it and people were warning about it, but like, it was like way news to me. I don't hear anybody, sharing that information or revealing that information. And so I think it's a real crucial book. It's going to help a lot of people, connect the dots.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Okay. My
Michelle,
pleasure.
We're going to stay in touch.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very
much. Sounds good. I'll send you those diagrams too.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.